The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. Hello, Cougar Nation.
Handoff middle. First down. Touchdown. And listen to the Cougar Nation.
Every Monday night, we break down the Cougars' last game and look ahead to next week. Cougar Nation, brought to you by Central Bank. Here's BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Welcome on in, Cougar Nation. Good evening. Mitch Harper here with you live from Broadcast House in Salt Lake City. Man, these times are good, right? Are they not, Cougar Nation? BYU 7-0, number 11 in the AP Top 25, flying high after that big win over Oklahoma State, 38-35 on Friday night. Just a huge moment, an iconic moment in BYU football history that will be remembered for many years to come. Going forward, we'll be taking your phone calls here throughout the evening. Coming up around segment 2, segment 3, around 6:20ish, we'll get to your phone calls. There's so much to unpack tonight with this show this evening, but we want to hear from you. Obviously, 801-575-8255. Load up the phone lines around 6:20, and we'll get to your calls here. BYU is going to be taking on the UCF Knights this Saturday. We'll get a preview of that game. It's going to be a loaded show here for you tonight here on Cougar Nation. Matt Baiamonte will be joining us, too, a little bit later this program as Matt is with some of his family. So we'll be checking in with him remotely this evening. Every week, if you're new to the show, we hold it down here every Monday night talking BYU football here on Cougar Nation. And let's recap that Oklahoma State win with some takeaways.
Cougar Nation takeaways. Mitch and Matt analyze BYU's last week of play and what it means for the next week.
BYU 38, Oklahoma State 35. Be honest, Cougar Nation. That last 73 seconds when BYU's offense took the field, were you like me and thinking it's over? BYU's not going to pull this out. I know the players believed. I know Jake Retzlaff believed. I know everyone on the coaching staff believed. But after that defensive stand, well, lack of defensive stand that gave up 17 plays to Oklahoma State, I thought it's just not BYU's night. They're going to have a one in that loss column, and it's not going to be the undefeated ride that we thought it could be coming out of that game. But they pulled it off. And Jake Retzlaff connected with Darius Lassiter, and BYU pulled off an amazing win that, honestly, I think it's one of the great wins in the Kalani Sitake era, not because of the opponent, but just the way it finished. And that's my takeaway number one, is that BYU was clutch when they needed to be. You think about BYU football over the years and some of the great quarterbacks. You know, there's many quarterbacks, and I point to John Beck, someone who I believe is one of the all-time greats in BYU football history at a place that knows quarterback play. And for the longest time, John Beck was always viewed as someone, he didn't have it. Cougar Nation always said, he doesn't have it. He can't get it done. And he had so many games that he was close, but couldn't get over the hump. And, you know, Jake Retzlaff had moments where he couldn't get over the hump last year. Think back to Stillwater when they were in double overtime. They couldn't get the job. He did put them in position to get to overtime in the fourth quarter. But still, it was always close, but he didn't get the job done. He'd only go so far. I think the fact that he got it done in a late game situation, I just feel gives a world of confidence to BYU, because there are going to be games this season where it's not going to work well for BYU, as we saw last Friday. But now that they've got the confidence that Jake Retzlaff, of all people, of all quarterbacks, can get done in a late game situation and generate a scoring drive for this team, I just think it unlocks another gear to this group that's playing at such a high level. You don't get to 7-0 by a fluke. I'm tired of people saying this is fluky. How good is BYU? Yes, every team in college football this year has got its warts. Everyone's got their flaws. But this BYU team is really good, and it's one of the best in college football. And honestly, I think they're getting slept on a bit. They should be much higher than number 11 in the AP Top 25 poll. To me, they should be around 7 or 8. But to have Jake Retzlaff deliver in the clutch, and Darius Lassiter, who banged up his shoulder a little bit, nothing serious, earlier in the game, and for him to deliver in that moment, it was huge for BYU, because I just think that gives another layer of confidence to this team. They always had this quiet confidence that none of us understood in the summer and the player-ran practices. But now it just shows that it doesn't matter what the circumstances are thrown at this team, they are going to rise to the occasion and deliver. Whether it's a defensive rock fight in Dallas at SMU, whether it's a pretty high-scoring game against Oklahoma State where the run defense is non-existent, Jake Retzlaff and the offense will come through, even on a night where Jake is throwing some picks and Hinkler Opati's getting in the action throwing a pick as well. BYU will find a way to get it done. And I just think that does a world of good for this BYU team, that no matter the circumstances, they can rise to the occasion and pull through and get a victory. Takeaway number 2 for me centers around L.J. Martin. 20 carries, 120 yards for the sophomore running back out of El Paso, Texas. L.J. was brilliant. On a night where Ollie Gordon was sensational for Oklahoma State, he reminded all of us of why he was the Doak Walker Award winner last season. L.J. Martin was just as good, and it showed you when you're seeing a Doak Walker Award candidate on the other sideline and you're thinking, LJ looks just as good, maybe better. That speaks to his talent, because far too often I think LJ has been slept on by BYU fans. I don't think he's been appreciated enough, and I think a lot of that was due to last season's ineptitude on the offense, that there wasn't appreciation for how good LJ can be. Coming into this year, I always felt that it was puzzling BYU didn't get a transfer portal running back. Guilty as charged. I was one of those people questioning that. It's worked out okay, but I never questioned the ability of L.J. Martin being a star RB1 at BYU. He's got so much potential. I thought it was interesting today, too. Aaron Roderick on his Coordinator's Corner program said, for the first time in a while, you were seeing BYU's offense ran similar to the way it was when Tyler Algier was in the backfield. And, again, that speaks to LJ's talent. LJ's got an ability on the high end to be an all-timer at BYU. I believe that. I don't know if he's going to be a single-season rushing leader like Tyler or be an all-time career leader like Jamal Williams. He's been obviously banged up quite a bit, and he acknowledged that dealing with those injuries, maybe hurt his confidence a little bit, but now his confidence is finding its groove. And that's exciting because in that game against Oklahoma State, he looked like a running back that was fresh, and because he has not taken many hits this season. And with only 5 games left in the regular season, that's exciting that now you're catching full wind of what L.J. Martin can be in this offense. Because, they're 7-0, and in only one game this year, this past Friday, did the running game put fear in an opponent. Jake Retzlaff has done his thing on the ground, and he's still BYU's leading rusher. But now you've got LJ, you've got Hinkler Opati, who's playing some good ball. Sione Aimoa, hopefully he can play this week against UCF. It's still let's get him healthy. I would expect definitely for the Utah game he's going to be available, but he's there. You still got Miles Davis. It's a good running back unit, and that's exciting for BYU as they continue to move forward into this season. But, this year has been a theme of statements for BYU. And statement number 7 against Oklahoma State was a great one for Kalani Sitake.
Statement 7 was just hey, find a way to win. It's a good team win. I can't sit there and say like one phase in all 3 phases that one was the key, but all 3 just stuck together and we just found a way to get a win.
It was a good win too. The atmosphere was electric. I'll give you another takeaway before we get to a break. How about that atmosphere? The drone show was electric. We had intern Allie holding it down, recording that. Great content there. I love that. I thought that just added an element to the pregame atmosphere. You got Cosmo on the top of the scoreboard. I was talking to Matt Biamonte over the week, and I thought, think about the 2 weeks of Cosmo. He goes parachute gliding. He's twirling a fire knife. He had a Houdini act. He's on top of the scoreboard at LES. Is there anything Cosmo can't do? That guy, if anyone, he needs a bye week. So give that man a break as BYU goes on the road this week to take on the UCF Knights. A little bit lighter workload on the road for Cosmo than what he does in Provo, holding it down. But it was an amazing atmosphere this past weekend as the Cougs get it done over Oklahoma State. Cougar Nation's brought to you by Central Bank, serving Utah County for over 133 years with trusted service, modern technology, and personalized care. We'll take a break. On their side, we'll check in with Matt Baiamonte, get his thoughts and his takeaways from the win over Oklahoma State, and then we'll take your phone calls coming up around the bottom of the hour as well. It's Cougar Nation, sponsored by Central Bank, right here on KSL News Radio. Welcome back in, Cougar Nation, on this Monday evening. Hope all of you are having a fantastic start to your week. Mitch Harper here with you at Broadcast House. This show is sponsored by Central Bank, and if you ever miss the program, subscribe to the podcast. Leave a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Check it out on KSLSports.com or wherever you get your podcast. Expecting to be joined by Matt Baiamonte coming up here shortly. Matt away, do some family priors he had to attend to, so we'll check in with Matt here shortly. But I wanted to get your calls, Cougar Nation, 801-575-8255. Load them up right here. During this segment, we'll talk some BYU football. And I want to ask you this question. Are you feeling more confident about this BYU team winning the Big 12 after that win over Oklahoma State? We're getting a few texts, but I want to hear some phone calls right now. 801-575-8255. I'll tell you, and I got a text here in the opening segment. I said that I feel like BYU should be around 7 or 8 in the AP Top 25 poll. Texter 5891, or excuse me, 2318 said BYU is not a number 7 team right now. Why? Tennessee's number 7 right now. They're 6-1. Tennessee lost to Arkansas. Arkansas beat Oklahoma State. BYU beat Oklahoma State. Like, you can play this. I know that's the transitive property thing, but college football is, there's so much parity in the sport. The transfer portal, NIL, it's created this situation where the 12-team playoff era has arrived in the perfect time because there are so many teams that can win and operate at a high level. BYU's got talent. I think people are falling victim too much to just looking at the logo and looking at the recruiting rankings and thinking, there's no way BYU can be a top 10 team. Why not? Why not? This offensive line is really good. You're getting production from Bruce Mitchell, Austin Leausa, players that no one was talking about coming into the season. They're performing at a high level. Oklahoma State's got good personnel, and you took their best shot. You know, Oklahoma State was coming out of a bye, and they threw a lot of different looks at BYU, as we expected they would. I mean, Mike Gundy teams are excellent coming out of bye weeks. Last year, they took down Kansas State. When they were 2-2 out of the bye, they took down the Wildcats and got a big win that changed the entire outlook of their season. So I think that was a really impressive win. I get tired of just when you have a close win, people then think, oh, you're not that good. Just find a way to win. Survive and advance. That's all that matters, because with the 12-team playoff, you're going to get in that field and you're going to have a chance to compete for the playoff. But I do think that the AP pollsters are sleeping on BYU. I was impressed, though, that they did rank BYU higher than Notre Dame. I was surprised by that. It's well-deserved, because Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, who's been a terrible football team this year. They're only 4-3. The Huskies are. So I'm glad that the pollsters got that right. But usually you just look at those logos and think, oh, Notre Dame's going to be better than BYU. Always right. I'm glad that people saw through that. Kalani Sitake, though, is not getting caught up in the outside noise, that's for sure. But he does acknowledge that win against Oklahoma State, it was good for the program.
We just got to keep improving, getting better. But can't deny the opportunity for us to celebrate the win. It was good for the program, good for our team, good for the offense, and good for the players.
It was a good win for BYU, and it does give me more confidence that this team is built to win a Big 12 championship, that's for sure. 801-575-8255. You can get on the phone lines with us and load them up here. 801-575-8255. Are you more confident that BYU can win a Big 12 title after that performance over Oklahoma State? We can get out to Linda. Linda, what's on your mind?
Oh, I am definitely confident that we'll win the Big 12, hopefully. I'm hoping, and I got my fingers crossed. That game the other night was a fantastic game. I loved it, and I managed to stay awake and listen to the whole thing, and I was so glad. That was just fantastic at the end when Jake was running for the touchdown, and then he threw it, and then the Lassiter got it. Oh, that was so good. Darius Lassiter. That was wonderful.
That it was. Thanks for the call, Linda. Appreciate that. That moment from Darius Lassiter was pretty special. And Lassiter's become a really good football player for BYU. You know, I don't think anyone thought of him as a wide receiver number one, and I still wouldn't put him as that. I'd still say Chase Roberts is the best receiver on this team, but you can't deny that Darius has improved significantly. I think you're looking at him potentially as a guy that, you know, maybe could be an undrafted free agent, high priority, maybe 7th-round draft pick. It's tough for wide receivers because there's just so many good pass catchers in college football that it's hard to imagine if you don't have the elite measurables to be an NFL guy. But Lassiter's highly productive. He's still got to tighten up those drops, though, a little bit. But I love what I'm seeing from Darius Lassiter. We're getting some more text, though. Keep calling in, 801-575-8255. BYU should be cautious, 5134 writes. They are always hot midway through the season and let it go to their heads. Stay hungry and humble. You know, that's an interesting point. I will say, on Friday it was kind of interesting to me. I saw like a wave of BYU players posting, you know, personal images of themselves in their football gear on Instagram. And I'm, you know, look, it's just an Instagram post, right? It's just social media. You're killing time to the late night kick. It's an 8:15 kick on a Friday. They're at the team hotel at the Marriott off Center Street. I get it. You're looking to kill the day, but I'm kind of wondering, are they getting a little bit into the, you know, the loving the likes, the engagement, the interaction that winning is bringing to this team? Is that getting a little bit to them? Maybe that caused them to come out a little bit flat, maybe. You know, but I do like the mindset, though, of this team. I do. And I think they've got good leadership. Kalani's pointed to that quite a bit. But I do believe that this team is in a good place mentally. And I think it was a nice little bit of a wake-up call that you've got to get a lot better, particularly on the defensive side. The ground attack for Oklahoma State was highly productive. They had more than 260 yards against BYU's defense. And I do attribute some of those new looks. The quarterback run game was unexpected. No one was seeing Alan Bowman taking off and running. First off, I mean, he wasn't expected to start. And then when he comes in, he's still running the football. That was unexpected. And that's just classic Mike Gundy for you at Oklahoma State, the head coach of the Pokes. And Mike Gundy notes, when he talked about the Big 12 and this race, anyone can beat anyone in the Big 12.
Oh, I mean, I've said it for a couple years and said it in the summer, and I'll say it again. I think that any team in this league is vulnerable on any day. I think that there's guys in this conference that know how to coach football, and there's players in this conference that know how to play. And based on how the ball bounces and a turnover or two, just about anybody can beat anybody, in my opinion.
Good stuff there from Mike Gundy. I thought he was pretty candid in the post-game press conference. You can see that full presser if you missed it on the KSL Sports YouTube. Texter 6168 says, I like the thought of the transitive properties and playing the who beat who game, but using the eye test and your honest heart, not a biased one. But honestly, do you think BYU beats Tennessee and deserves a number 7 ranking? Look, BYU would probably be an underdog. You know, I'm referencing Tennessee as the number 7 team in the country, but keep in mind, Tennessee's best defensive player was a former BYU guy until he got injured, Keenan Pili. So it's not like BYU doesn't have talent. Like BYU guys that transfer and go to these higher programs, they become studs for these programs. BYU's got talent. So much of college football is based on narrative, and they can't stomach the idea that a new face might be, you know, ruffling the feathers of the structure of the sport. Like, oh my gosh, someone from the outside the SEC and Big Ten might be good. Like Iowa State has a close call against a athletic, talented UCF team, not a great UCF team, but they have a close call and they drop. Like that just doesn't compute to me why we see that in the sports. Like you win a football game against a Power 4 team, you should be rewarded and commended for that instead of, no, they're going to drop them because, well, that logo's better than this one, and we like that one better, so we're going to put them higher. Like, why not? Square it all. Let's see BYU and Tennessee in a playoff game. I think BYU would show up quite well. BYU has passed every test they've faced so far to date. SMU's 6-1 in the ACC. They have a chance to go win the ACC. That was a good win. So BYU's playing some good football. I think that in college football today, anyone can go down on any given week, and the same can be said about the Big 12, and that's why BYU has a great chance to win the Big 12 Conference, but at the same time, they got to be playing their A game every single week in order to win that conference. Let's take a break, though. News, traffic, and weather. Then we'll get to Matt Baiamonte next for what's trending up and trending down with BYU football. Welcome back into Cougar Nation, your weekly check-in where we hear from the voice of Cougar Nation here on KSL News Radio. I'm Mitch Harper, your BYU insider for KSL Sports. You can check out all my bylines on KSLSports.com. We'll be holding it down this Saturday, 9 a.m. Extended pregame coverage, BYU, UCF from Orlando. Number 11 Cougs going to be taking on the UCF Knights. Only the fourth ever meeting between these two programs. Third meeting in the regular season. First time BYU is going to go to the Bounce House since 2014, excuse me. So it's been about 10 years. Remember that last visit to Orlando was in the year where BYU was almost undefeated. They had lost the week prior to Utah State. Taysom Hill went down with an injury. Christian Stewart stepped in and had a valiant effort, but BYU came up short in overtime to UCF this week. Obviously looking for a better performance this time around against a Knights team that's somewhat down and out at the moment. They're 3-4 on the season, currently on a 4-game losing streak. But myself and Matt Baiamonte, my co-host here on Cougar Nation, he's away tonight, but we're checking in with him now. Matt, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you guys doing?
Doing great, Matt. And BYU is 7-0, riding high. This amazing wave of momentum for Cougar football is so high right now, and I think it's time for us over the phone here to get into what's trending with the Cougars as they continue this hot momentum.
Cougar Nation, trending. What's trending up and what's trending down this football season.
All right, Matt, what's trending up for you right now for BYU football?
Trending up for me is confidence in key situations that BYU football can get wins. What happened on Friday night, that final drive and getting the win late in the game, that doesn't happen very often. And you saw throughout the weekend, Mitch, a number of games where it didn't happen. And there was another Big 12 game in which it did. Iowa State miraculously holding on against UCF. But most of the time, you don't succeed in those situations. And for BYU to have done that offensively, that gave me some confidence. We've seen it defensively this year a couple of times, but we haven't seen it offensively. 73 seconds to go, they march down the field and get the game-winning touchdown. I feel better situationally that if you need a game-winning drive, this team has been there and they've done that. What about you?
I like that a lot. I think what's trending up for me is the play of Darius Lasser. I talked about him in the previous segment, but 6 catches, 129 yards, a touchdown. Obviously, that touchdown was massive. And then we forget the opening play of the game, a 50-yard bomb between him and Retzlaff. I just think Lassiter is playing at a pretty high level, and I think he can get better if he just cleans up those drops. That's been kind of a common occurrence for this BYU team. The last 3 games, they've had 3 or 4 drops in all 3 of these last couple games. So hopefully they clean that up, but I do love the play of Lassiter. On the flip side, Matt, what do you feel is trending down for this BYU football team?
It's the run defense, and it's a real concern this week when the Cougs go out to humid Orlando, Florida, because you saw what Central Florida did on the road in Ames. They ran all over that Cyclone defense, and I don't know on the road if you can sustain a win if the Knights run for over 300 yards like they did against Iowa State. So I was a little concerned about the run defense. Look, in Oklahoma State, they've got a great running back, Ollie Gordon. We know how legit he is, but you look across the Big 12, Mitch, there's a lot of great running backs. And UCF has a really, really talented running back as well. So run defense is not trending in the right direction. I love the yards per play numbers. I love the scoring defense, and I love the takeaways. They're one of the most opportunistic defenses in the Big 12 when it comes to takeaways. But if you can't stop the run, that's going to come back to get you at some point. So, unfortunately, I feel like that rush defense is heading in the wrong direction.
And along those same lines for me, it's got to be just tackling. I thought the tackling was pretty poor from BYU. Kalani Sitake kind of noted that, they were kind of overextending, trying a little bit too hard. It felt like, BYU was not themselves, not the BYU team that we've grown to know this season, where they're just this stout defense and they can get off the field. I just think that has got to get cleaned up here in a hurry, because you noted it. UCF has a very good ground attack with R.J. Harvey, and I think even though despite UCF losing this past weekend to Iowa State, I still believe that performance against a top 10 team gave UCF a little bit of confidence going into this BYU game that they can compete against anyone. So they're not going to be afraid against BYU, and they're almost going to be, in many respects, feels like they're going to be licking their chops that they feel like they can take this thing to a higher level.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because coming into that game, it sort of felt like with UCF players hitting the transfer portal, going on the road, that season could implode for UCF. And that was a really impressive performance, because there's moments in a season when it's not going your way. Does the team band together and figure it out and salvage the season? Look, UCF, they're not going to have the season they wanted to have. Some people thought they were going to be in the mix for a Big 12 championship game. That's out the window. They're not competing for a Big 12 championship. And so you wonder sometimes with these teams, are they just going to fold and explode, and then they go on the road and have a performance like that? The players that are still in that program, I think that was a bonding moment for them to be like, hey, you know what? Let's stick together. Let's play well. Maybe we can spoil someone else's season. That's kind of what BYU was doing last year. Whereas, like, can we give Oklahoma a loss? Can we keep Oklahoma State out of the Big 12 championship game? Those things did not happen. But a team can rally and sort of find itself. And so I'm totally with you on that. I kind of wanted them to get blown out, because then I would have felt like maybe they would just fold up shop and that would be an easy win. But now it looks like this UCF game, it's going to be a lot more difficult than we originally thought.
I also think for BYU, what's trending up, and, it's crazy to say this, because when you look at the whole game, Jake wasn't great, but man, he was clutch at the end. And I feel like Jake's trending up after that game, but you look at the final stat line, 13 of 26, 2 interceptions, 218 through the air. But, I mean, he was clutch when he needed to be.
I love that, Mitch, because you look at the numbers and you would just say this is an average performance. But then you really go back and rewatch the game, and now we're starting to see some of the Pro Football Focus grades come out, where he was one of the highest graded quarterbacks in all of college football last week, and you're wondering, how does that make sense? Because these aren't great completion numbers, the yardage numbers aren't high, he had turnovers, but when you really break it down, there was only 1 or 2 really bad decisions. That interception right before the half, that was not ideal, and that could have been disastrous, but that was a Hail Mary situation. So that's not a bad decision. Maybe he should have taken the sack when there wasn't an opportunity to really get a good throw on it. But the only really poor decision I can remember in that game was when they were in scoring position and he threw it to the end zone in the northeast corner, and it got picked off, and you're saying, hey, you have at least 3 points. You can't do that. But then in the second half, he led multiple scoring drives. They scored 24 points in the second half, Mitch. And then that game-winning drive, his ability to run. And the thing that I like, too, about Jake's running ability is, yes, there are a few quarterback-designed runs. We see that. But a good chunk of his yardage is on a passing play that breaks down. He gets out of the pocket and takes off and gets some positive yards. I just think Jake, sometimes we throw this word around too much, but Jake is a gamer. And we've seen this in multiple games now. When you need something big from Jake in this offense, more times than not, he has delivered this season. And I think he's trending up. He's getting better every single week. Still, you got to clean up those mistakes. And in some respect, Mitch, maybe those mistakes are a part of who he is, because he makes a lot of chunk plays. And if you're going to have chunk plays and game-winning drives and 27-yard runs and an occasional pick, sign me up for that, because it's resulting in wins.
Well said. I think Jake Retzlaff's the last time a BYU quarterback had a touchdown game-winning drive with a minute or less was Tanner Mangum. Zach Wilson, Jaron Hall, they didn't have what Jake Retzlaff just pulled off this weekend. So we got to give credit to Jake Retzlaff for that performance. Got to give credit to you, Matt, for hopping on the line when you got busy family stuff to attend to. You'll be back in the saddle next Monday, but then you'll be with me out in Orlando on Saturday. We'll have extended pregame beginning at 9 a.m.
Oh, it's going to be a blast. I cannot wait for this one. This look, I couldn't pass up an opportunity to talk about this team because how often are they 7-0, Mitch? This just does not happen every single year where it's a special season right now, and you got to enjoy every second of it.
Well said. That's Matt Baiamonte, host of Cougar Nation. He'll be back again, like I said, next Monday here with us. I'll talk to you later, Matt.
Yeah, take care, Mitch. Have a good night, everyone.
All right, that's Matt Baiamonte, and this show is sponsored by Central Bank, serving Utah County for over 133 years with trusted service, modern technology, and personalized care. Central Bank. Go to centralbank.com. We'll take a break, and Cougar Nation will take more of your phone calls, 801-575-8255. Do you feel more confident this team can win the Big 12 after that win over Oklahoma State? Let's hear from you next, 801-575-8255, right here on Cougar Nation. Welcome back into Cougar Nation, sponsored by Central Bank, 801-575-8255. Feel free to call in. Share your thoughts if you're more optimistic now that BYU is going to win the Big 12 after that win over Oklahoma State. Got a text, 1786, stop drinking the blue Kool-Aid. You escape by poor tackling on a crappy Oklahoma State team. The defense lets up a lot of points. That will come back to get them. Well, that's true. They did get by. But what are you measuring them by? Are you measuring them up against Georgia? If you're trying to measure BYU up to the standard of Georgia, well, yeah, that's a lost cause. But can you not appreciate that at this point they've gotten to 7-0, and 5 of those opponents have been against power conference teams? What's the issue here? Yes, everyone's going to have downsides. And if you're looking for perfection, then you're going to be upset all the time as a fan. You're never going to be happy. You're going to, why would you take on the role of Kalani, of always seeking perfection? That's for the coaches. For the fans, why are you seeking perfection here out of this team? Yes, there's gonna be some games where you're a little bit frustrated and you're thinking, why are they playing this way? But what's different this year compared to years past is that you do have talent to overcome this and hope that was just a one-off performance. I have reason to believe that Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, Tyler Batty, Blake Mangelson, John Nilsson are not going to let that be a thing again with that run defense. I have a lot of belief in this defense. If they didn't have talent, I'd say sound the alarm. This is a fool's gold deal where BYU has just got by the skin of their teeth. You look at what BYU's done to this point. The win over Baylor, I think in the season's end, is going to end up looking pretty good for BYU because Baylor, they went on the road and just tore apart Texas Tech, and they put up 59 points in that game. Sawyer Robertson is playing some really good ball. Now, Texas Tech, terrible defense. You want to talk about bad defenses? That's Texas Tech. No sign of them changing at all. BYU's a good defense. They just had, I believe, an off night. I believe in Jay Hill, too. So I think BYU's resume and what they've done to this point should be given more credit than what being at 11. Yes, was it ideal how that game played out and you're giving up a 17-play drive? No, but I think, again, you've seen a lot more good from the defense than bad. Now, the offense, I still have my moments where I'm not ready to just go all in and say they've arrived. But I do have to give credit to Jake Retzlaff. When he is doubted, he always answers the bell this year. He's done a really good job of proving critics wrong and finding a way to get an answer. And that's all you can ask for. But again, if you're looking to compare BYU to the Georgias of the world, I think that's a mistake. But keep in mind, though, and I keep going to this point, college football, there's more parity than ever. The number one team in the country this year, they only won by 10 over Idaho in the FCS ranks. That's the number one team in the country. No one brings that up, but they won by 10 over an FCS team. Should people suddenly panic because Oregon only won by 10? Should BYU fans panic because you only won by 3 over Oklahoma State, who less than a year ago was in the Big 12 title game? No, that's all I'm saying. There's weeks where you're not at your complete best. But I believe that there's enough leadership and good coaching in place that they're going to bounce back. Now, it's tricky this week because you do have a short week with UCF. You're going to travel out on Thursday, and so it is another condensed week for BYU, so they better be dialed in. UCF has an excellent running back, similar to Ollie Gordon. R.J. Harvey is an absolute stud. The benchmark for R.J. Harvey, if he gets to 150, odds are high UCF will win. They are 3-1 in games this year when R.J. Harvey goes off for 150 or more on the ground. The one loss this past weekend, he had 196 yards against the number one defense in the Big 12 in Iowa State. So, yes, I understand there's reason to be a little bit worried, but I think that BYU's better equipped personnel-wise to bounce back in a hurry than in years past. UCF's got a new quarterback, too, Jakari Brown, which is a fascinating development because in the offseason when they signed KJ Jefferson from Arkansas, I thought, BYU's going to play KJ Jefferson for the third consecutive year. He's been terrible, though. He got benched 2 weeks ago. They played E.J. Colson, a redshirt freshman. He played poorly against Cincinnati. And then they take in Jakari Brown, the third stringer, and he can't throw the ball a lick. Now, I know Gus Malzahn, the UCF head coach, praised him in his weekly press conference today with having one of the biggest arms in college football. But if the Iowa State game is any indication, the throwing game is not a threat for BYU. So they got to be dialed into stopping the run, stack that box, and force UCF to pass at all costs. And I think BYU can have some success. And I think what gives me hope, too, for BYU to not let, those run defense woes continue is that they're relatively healthy. Outside of Sione Moa, the linebacker, number 41, Che Bryant Strother, this is a pretty healthy group. Now, everyone's got their bangs and bruises and things like that, but the key guys, they're there in place, and they're available, which credit to Dr. Skylar Main, Colby Clausen, so much talk about the sports scientists and the strength and conditioning staff. Those guys have done a really good job, and BYU players, by all accounts, going into game number 8 before a bye week, they're in a pretty good spot health-wise to get ready for that final stretch. And BYU in a Big 12 conference that's pretty wide open, I think they're the best team right now. I've watched every team in this 16-team conference. I try to go back and watch as many games as I can on DVR, on demand, watch these games. And BYU's got the personnel. They've got the talent. I think that's where fans are sleeping on this team still. Like when you watch the fellow Big 12 peers, BYU stacks up just as well from a measurables, from a size. They've got the personnel to win this thing. And this is not a smoke and mirrors sort of deal. We got to also acknowledge, too, BYU has had some blowout wins over teams, too. So the close calls have not been a weekly occurrence. This is another week, though, against UCF where just find a way to get the win. Get in, get out, stay healthy, and get on to Utah and be 8-0. I don't care what the final score is. Just find a way to get the win and empty the tank as BYU gets ready for another bye week after this one when they take on the UCF Knights. It was kind of interesting, too. Kalani pointed out that it's a little bit of a homecoming. The first lady of BYU football, his wife, Timberly, she's from Florida, so there's going to be a lot of in-laws for Kalani supporting him in attendance at the Bounce House. I expect a pretty big crowd of BYU fans. There's a lot of BYU fans and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints down in Florida. So I bet there'll be a huge turnout of BYU faithful showing up to the Bounce House. And I can't imagine that UCF fans are excited about the product right now, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of tickets unloaded by UCF fans coming up to this one. I saw some tickets on the secondary market around $28 to get in, which pretty reasonably priced to get in to see a number 11 team in the country take on someone out on the East Coast. So it's going to be a lot of fun. BYU, UCF, kickoff at 1:30. Extended pregame gets started bright and early with me and Matt Baiamonte from Orlando starting at 9 a.m. We'll get your game day started for the Cougs and the Knights. Only the fourth ever meeting between the two schools. It'll be the first as Big 12 foes. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. We appreciate Central Bank for sponsoring Cougar Nation. And again, next Monday, Matt Baiamonte will be back in studio with me. Subscribe to the podcast, and we will talk to you on Saturday from Orlando as your undefeated Cougars get ready to take on the UCF Knights. Talk to you then here on KSL News Radio.